Hello, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives on a snowy Monday morning here in Mystery Island, Maryland. It's January 13th, 2025, and 11 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States, which, as far as I can know, up to the moment, is still the United States. And wow, things are going to change so fast if Donald Trump has his way. But I don't think he's going to find it easy to join Canada, United States, and Greenland together. Oh, well, it's a lot of crazy ideas coming out and pushing for this and that, that are not, we're not really on the agenda of the campaign, seems to me to be a little bit disingenuous. I hate to say that so early, but you know, the campaign was all about sovereignty. And one thing I did notice this morning was President Trump really slamming Prime Minister Keir Starmer over in Britain, saying no foreign power has the right to interfere with our democracy. And nobody's ever talked that way to Great Britain in many, 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 many decades. I'd have to go back to probably 1870 or so. Yes, when we used to have James Garfield and people that were really there for America. And, one of the big themes that I've had since I started doing my work here is the fact that so many good essays have already been written, and I find writing to be a little bit tedious and difficult. You should have seen me pulling my hair out trying to get my book written. When I finally published it in 2021, I was so relieved, and I haven't wanted to write a book ever since then. But the point is that I do a lot of research all over the internet, and one of my favorite sources is the Executive Intelligence Review, because of the depth of their writing and hundreds of different writers. This writer I've selected for today's show is new to me, and I've Googled her, and I think maybe she has some social media pages, but she's not anybody prominent in the world of geopolitics right now. But at the time she wrote this in 2007, man, she had a handle on it. And so what we have is a window back in time to 2007, when young people like her, I think she was 20 or 21 when she wrote this, when young people who had an education, a good education, could see what's going on, and the diversion of all our energy into cyberspace and digital and computers. And well, I'm very, very happy to have found this essay. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. I may stop with some comments, but basically it's an easy morning for me because I'm just going to be reading a very well-written essay. So let me get to it, and I hope you all find it well worth your time. Executive Intelligence Review, August 10th, 2007. Artificial intelligence is the subject. The title is Spacewar. Welcome to the Post-Human Era, by Gabriela Arroyo Reyes of the LaRouche Youth Movement. Now, this is 2007, okay? So think of it back then. Ready or not, computers are coming to the people. That's good news, maybe the best since psychedelics. It's way off the track of the computers threat or menace school of liberal criticism, but surprisingly in line with the romantic fantasies of the forefathers of the science, such as Norbert Wiener, Warren McCulloch, J.C.R. Licklider, John von Neumann, and Vannevar Bush. I should say Vannevar Bush. I looked it up one time. Rhymes with beaver. Way to go, Beaver Bush. The trend owes its health to an odd array of influences, the youthful fervor and firm disestablishmentarianism of the freaks who designed computer science, an astonishingly enlightened research program from the very top of the Defense Department, an unexpected market banking movement by the manufacturers of small calculating machines, and an irrepressible midnight phenomenon known as Spacewar. Reliably, at any nighttime moment, i.e., non-business hours, in North America, hundreds of computer technicians are effectively out of their bodies, locked in life-or-death space combat, computer projected onto cathode ray tube display screens for hours at a time, ruining their eyes, numbing their fingers in frenzied mashing of control buttons, joyously slaying their friends, and wasting their employers' invaluable computer time. Something basic is going on. And that's a quote from an essay called Spacewar by Stuart Brand, published in Rolling Stone back in 1972. All right, now we're into the text. Within the remote confines of Stanford's Artificial Intelligence Laboratory in Palo Alto, California, something big was brewing, the implications of which would make the likes of Bertrand Russell, Norbert Wiener, and Mephistopheles himself cackle. In all their righteous, scraggly glory, the self-proclaimed enlightened hippies from New York City to Haight-Ashbury, who had, quote, tuned in, turned on, and dropped out, unquote, to the point of dullness, were immersing themselves in the writings of Norbert Wiener, Buckminster Fuller, and Marshall McLuhan. It was through these New Age visionaries that they could vicariously envision themselves in a cyber universe, one in which they could leave behind any semblance of responsibility for the past, present, or future, in which material reality could be wholly imagined as an information system. The mysterious but long-awaited Internet was about to be unveiled, like a Pandora's box upon an unsuspecting world, and there were high hopes everywhere, as MIT's Nicholas Negroponte put it, that it would, quote, flatten organizations, globalize society, decentralize control, and help harmonize people, unquote. Long gone would be the days of dirigistic economies and industry. The faint sounds of spinning lathes, milling cutters, dirigibles and gliders, cranes and tractors would inevitably fall into an eerie silence. In their place, the Internet would usher in an unprecedented era as it paved the way for a, quote, digital generation, unquote. But not merely digital in the conventional sense, as Dr. Timothy Leary, parentheses, not one to jump on this cataclysmic bandwagon too late, close parentheses, attested when he reached the profound realization that psychedelia as a radical new religion attracted too few followers, and instead opted to coronate himself as the new high priest of cyberculture, prophesying that virtual reality was the new and improved, quote, electronic LSD, unquote. In a cultural landscape such as this one, where it can be said with certainty that the fate of entire language cultures teeters on the edge of a slippery precipice, it becomes difficult to ignore the debris of a civilization that had once produced minds of an impressive caliber and moral fiber that laid the very foundations in culture, science, epistemology, and the maxim of man's divine spark of reason. Whoever would be so naive and gullible as to be seduced by this technotronic symbiotic union of gadgetry with the perverse would be, wittingly or unwittingly, giving in to the tried and true methods of the Luciferian Venetian Empire, as the ancient hands of time bear witness to the fact that Venice would rather kiss the hand it could not sever. From the counterculture to cyberculture. The two pillars of assault on the American intellectual tradition, although cloaked in what appeared to be antithetical garments, were cybernetics and the drug culture. In the same way that the youth were corrupted in the aftermath of World War II into their adolescent years during the Vietnam War, today there is a culture of rabid existentialism, ahistoric by its very nature, that because of the multiplicity of options available to it, doesn't know which reality to choose to make its own. I just have to say that one hit me kind of hard. As we try to really see through the veils and, you know, look behind the curtain, we don't know what's real. And that's kind of hit me in the chest because I felt that way without being able to articulate it for so long. Doesn't know which reality to choose to make its own. And the preconditions are being set by the modern day descendants of the aforementioned Wieners and Russellites to ensure a new artificial paradigm shift into a culture that would bring about its own destruction, and with it, the most advanced ideas that civilization has produced to date, a culture that only a cyber culture could offer. The Advanced Research Projects Agency, ARPA, was established on February 17, 1958, under the Defense Reorganization Act in response to the Soviet Union's launching of Sputnik to ensure that missile response capability in the United States would be adequate. Under the Defense Department, ARPA was bequeathed $520 million by Congress, and with it, sole responsibility, quote, for the direction or performance of such advanced projects in the field of research and development as the Secretary of Defense shall from time to time designate by individual project or by category, unquote. This is DoD Directive 5105.15. In 1963, the portion of research dealing with missile technology was moved from the jurisdiction of the military to become a separate entity known as the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, at which point ARPA was left with nothing but a large budget. The morbidly astute behavioral psychologist J.C.R. Licklider, parentheses, who would later run the Command and Control Research Division of ARPA Research, close parentheses, was quick to suggest that ARPA, which would in 1972 change its name to Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, should invest heavily in computer and artificial intelligence research. As the Cold War intensified, ARPA became a willing vessel for the ideas of cybernetic unmanned warfare of Norbert Wiener, which relied on the computers being built based on the logic designs of John von Neumann. An overwhelming number of research and development initiatives and disciplines under the rubric of, quote, interactive computer systems associated with human system integration, HMI, and dealing on one level or another with human brain-machine interfaces, the internet, or the gaming industry, have a genesis which can be traced back to the earliest days of DARPA, or I should say, earliest days of ARPA. It was through ARPA that the cybernetic blueprint regarding human-machine interface would be unveiled. Today, DARPA proudly carries on the cybernetic torch with the AugCog, which is Augmented Cognition Program, which, through its ongoing research and development for the Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force, seeks to develop a computational system that, with the aid of prosthetic technologies such as cued memory retrieval, would enhance the overall effectiveness and performance of the warrior soldier. Quote, the newly emerging field of augmented cognition is aimed at revolutionizing the way humans interact with computer-based systems by coupling traditional electromechanical interaction devices, parentheses, such as a mouse or a joystick, with psychophysiological methods, parentheses, respiration, heart rate, e.g., functional optical imaging, where human physiological indicators can be used in real time to drive system adaptation or a priori assess potential design issues which may induce information overload or inefficient decision making, unquote. That's a quote from DARPA. This is the beginning of what some hope will be the next big paradigm shift, not only in interactive computing, but that it will come to define new parameters for what it means to be human. The barely recognizable remnants of the military-industrial complex had been transformed into the military entertainment complex. This is the training ground for what is now being infamously called post-human warfare, a realm in which the unyieldingly faithful and self-avowed worshippers of the fathers of cybernetics and information theory, Wiener and von Neumann, have incessantly and tirelessly dedicated themselves to the propagation of a renaissance in which there exists a seamless fusion between the digital cybernetic machine and the human being. It is a grave error, according to them, to assume that cognition is an occurrence that takes place in the human mind. Instead, the high priests of posthumanism audaciously preach that cognition is a logical, systemic activity which is distributed throughout the environments in which human entities just happen to move and work. There's so much in this essay that other people have fleshed out afterwards. Of course, the Venetian connection that I wrote, I've talked about many times, and the connection of Venetian quote-unquote republic, which is an empire, oligarchical empire, which is what the British Empire is now, an oligarchical empire, and the idea that there's an idea of what they're calling a noosphere, and that is that knowledge really is not something that stays inside of the human brain. It's like all everywhere, you know? And so if we're all connected, then we can all share and benefit and yeah. Okay, so next, can machines supersede man? And this is a quote from Ihab Hassan in a book called Prometheus as Performer Toward a Post-Human Culture. We need first to understand that the human form, including human desire and all its external representations, may be changing radically and thus must be revisioned. We need to understand that 500 years of humanism may be coming to an end as humanism transforms itself into something that we must helplessly call posthumanism. The litmus test for the age-old question of whether or not machines could supersede man's intellect was typified by what was widely known as the Universal Turing Machine, that's Turing, or Turing test, as described by Professor Alan Turing in his 1950 paper, quote, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, unquote. It consists of the following procedure. A human judge engages in a conversation with two other parties, one a human and the other a machine. Based on the responses from each of them, the judge, who does not know which is which, must figure out which is the human, which is the machine. It is presumed that both the human and the machine will try to mislead the judge as to its real identity and pose as, quote, the most human, unquote. If an intelligent being cannot tell the intelligent machine from the intelligent human, this failure, according to Turing, would be the final and necessary proof that machines can think and would draw out an obvious distinction between intellectual and physical capacities of the thinking human being. It was not until 1974 at a meeting of the American Society for Cybernetics in Philadelphia that the phrase second order or second wave of cybernetics was officially coined by Heinz von Förster. There are three main waves of cybernetics that are distinguishable today. First order cybernetics, which Wiener helped engineer and which lasted from the 1940s to the mid-1970s. Second order cybernetics, which lasted from the mid-1970s until the mid-1990s. Finally, the third order cybernetics, also known as the period of social cybernetics, parentheses with which the futurists and humanist educators of today seem to preoccupy themselves the most, which began in the mid-1990s. Carrying on where Turing left off, Hales, Hassan, and Hans Moravec propose in their rehashed theories that human identity is essentially an informational pattern, and that it has become increasingly, quote, disembodied, unquote. Moravec even goes as far as to make the modest proposal that, in the not too distant future, human consciousness will itself be downloadable into a computer. Quote, we are cyborgs, not in the merely superficial sense of combining flesh and wires, but in the more profound sense of being human technology symbiotes, thinking and reasoning systems whose minds and selves are spread across biological brain and non-biological circuitry, unquote. The fusion between the biological and technological domains has created what academicians and scholarships has created what academicians and scholars are likening to a, quote, cognitive machinery, unquote, which they predict will inevitably evolve into a self-perpetuating process. To begin to unravel the convoluted phenomenon they describe, one need only to assess with a clinical eye the woes, curses, and bizarre sentimentality that pour forth from the mouths of mesmerized computer video game players, thus affirming that they are merely projecting their proprioceptive senses into the simulation that is the gaming world. As though in a trance produced by the flashing graphics of the Technicolor LCD screen, many devout gamers find themselves locked in the same positions for countless hours, their left hand tapping away mindlessly on the keyboard, and their itchy trigger-happy finger nervously and repetitively guiding the mouse up and down, entrenched to the point of exaggeration in the simulated space of the virtual world, indulged to the point of complete oblivion to the real world around them. There is a fluid intermingling between flesh and metal, where there seemingly exist no physical boundaries between their fleshy bodies and the joystick, which has now become an unconscious extension of their hands. Whoa. Welcome to the era of disembodied information, where flesh and metal become one. But before the preconditions of a post-human future are fully comprehended, the question must be posed: who are the agents of this degrading misnomer that passes for, quote, human science? Nancy Catherine Hales, professor of English at UCLA and author of the cult classic of cyberneticists and futurists alike, How We Became Posthuman, Virtual Bodies in Cybernetics, Literature, and Informatics, speaks for an emerging breed of academician determined to keep this odiously entropic and venomous dogma alive. Hales describes the kooky research of Kevin Warwick, professor of cybernetics at the University of Reading in England, who inserted an implant into his arm, his first implant being a passive device communicating only with embedded sensors in the environment. He went on from this first attempt to a second implant that also sends signals to his nervous system, creating an integrated circuit, linking his evolving neural patterns directly with sensors and computer chips embedded in the external environment. Such are the depths to which these engineers of the apocalypse will plunge in their promotion of a science, by nomenclature only, devoid of profound and impassioned ideas. Hales describes what she sees as the promising future of the post-human vision, which, despite the fact that it still has problems and dangers, makes an otherwise meaningless and miserable existence quite bearable. Pardon me a moment. All right, next part I think is particularly important for today. The merger of defense and entertainment. The other leading propagandists of this perverse social fusion between man and machine include the Institute for Creative Technologies in Marina del Rey, California, In December of 1996, the National Academy of Sciences hosted a workshop on the common and organized aims that existed in the defense and entertainment industries, dealing with modeling and simulation. The report that would emerge in the aftermath of the workshop, at the request of Professor Michael Ziada, parentheses, computer science specialist in artificial intelligence at the Naval Postdoctoral Academy in Monterey, California, and director of the MOVES Institute, which spawned the game American Army, close parentheses, prompted 3 years later the U.S. Army to fund the University of Southern California with a $45 million budget to create a research center that would develop and advance military simulations and reflect the overlap between the Pentagon and Hollywood. Also, in this growing list of propagandists is the Institute for the Future, which was founded in 1968 by former Rand Corporation researchers and today claims to forecast the future. Another incubator for the continued creation of explicitly anti-human ideas goes by the name of HASTAC, Humanities, Arts, Science, and Technology Advanced Collaboratory. HASTAC. The conception for the HASTAC Consortium came in 2003 at a meeting of humanities leaders sponsored by the Mellon Foundation. Founder Kathy N. Davidson, parentheses, Vice Provost for Interdisciplinary Studies and co-founder of John Hope Franklin Humanities Institute at Duke University, and co-founder David Theo Goldberg of the University of California Humanities Research Institute in Irvine, had already envisioned a plethora of projects that would expand innovative uses of technology to create an unparalleled cyber infrastructure process. Included in the core leadership of HASTAC are Jeffrey Snapp, director of the Stanford University Humanities Lab, Rutsena Bachesi, director of the Center for Information Technology Research in the Interests of Society at the University of California, Berkeley, Hadass Sheffer, Director of Fellowship Programs at the Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Foundation, and Henry Lowood, Curator for Germanic Collections and History of Science and Technology Collections at Stanford University Libraries, Stanford University. HASTAC describes itself as a, quote, voluntary consortium of leading researchers from dozens of institutions who have been co-developing software, hardware, and cyber infrastructure. Legal, ethical, social, historical, and aesthetic issues must also be carefully considered as we expand our capacities for accumulating and analyzing data as we push the boundaries of science and what it means to be human, unquote. From among its ranks, HASTAC seeks to create a new generation of scholars in the humanities who have an infallible expertise in the most advanced work in creating leading-edge information technologies and transform institutions in the process of spreading their cyber humanities vision. Only in its fourth year of existence, HASTAC already commands academic attention and has more than 70 institutions under its umbrella, including Wayne State, one of our good friend David Kramer, Underdown's favorite Michigan institutions, Wayne State University, Duke, Boston, Cornell, George Mason, of course, Rice, and Stanford Universities, University of California at Irvine, the Universities of Michigan, Southern California, and Washington State, and last but not least, the Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Foundation, Digital Promise, and the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, parentheses, the country's largest private grant-making institution with assets of $6 billion. Two of the most ambitious projects under the HASTAC umbrella are, quote, the global body and the virtual cyborg, unquote, which is already underway through programs at Duke University, and, quote, how they got game, cultural implications of interactive simulations and video games, unquote, from the Stanford Humanities Lab, one of HASTAC's founding members. It is from these pitiable echelons that the morally repugnant Timothy Lenore crawls out. With funding from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, Lenore's past endeavors have included investigative projects launched from Stanford Humanities Department at the time he was teaching the history of science. Today, Lenore is the Kimberly Jenkins Chair for New Technologies and Society at Duke University, where he continues to engage in research for the introduction of virtual reality into biomedics and other humanities fields. The Jenkins Collaboratory exists for the sole purpose of investigating and pushing the limits of, quote, transformative processes, unquote, in fields such as cultural production and human machine engineering, as well as biotechnology. Today, the, quote, game, unquote, project is housed at Duke University and focuses on the development of, quote, industrial strength simulations that are the product of the military's relationship with Hollywood and the gaming industry. It is here that the collaboratory of simulation, first-person shooters, strategy, and storytelling project leaders from PEO Stricom, Program Executive Office for Simulating Training and Instrumentation Command, the Institute for the Future, Science Applications International Corporation, yes, SAIC, you know those guys, MIT Media Lab, and SimNet, Simulated Network, Slime Molds Interface. Well, I think our author has a bit of an attitude toward these folks. Slime molds, indeed. These are not merely colorful concoctions springing forth from fertile imaginations of mad scientists and pedagogues of calamity. This is a heinous attempt to create from among the ranks of the emerging generation a class of desensitized drones who will conform to the absurdity of a society in which nothing is held to be true and everything is permitted. Reminiscent of the dark ages in science, where knowledge was suppressed, today it is not a question of annihilating science, but of controlling it. These are and always have been the preconditions to control a society. From the pits of the aforementioned nexus have sprung the seeds that were necessary predecessors to the modern-day Darwinian, globalized market and cyber culture that have spawned a population on the verge of willingly surrendering that which renders them superior to apes, bacteria, and computers, their humanity. And that is the essay. I am thrilled to have found it because it, in so many ways, it shows the abandonment of our humanity that is entailed in entering the cyberspace, the cyber universe. Because once you go in there in one of their computer games or simulations, you're going to no longer have any rules. And you're going to be able to make your own rules. And, you know, I don't play those games. I know a lot of people do, and it's a fun pastime. And like anything else, I guess, you know, it may have been built to be addictive, like drugs and alcohol and things, but maybe most people just think, well, I can handle this. And probably you can. I don't know. But can our society handle it? Can our culture survive it? Can we guarantee that our grandchildren will have a human life, or will they be automatically absorbed into some type of a cybernetic noosphere, if you will, in which they don't have any choice, in which they only have a part to play, perhaps? Well, perhaps they're just useless eaters and no longer necessary. The media have been so powerful in just assuming that this technological nightmare is our inevitable future. You know, this is if you love Isaac Asimov's science fiction, realize that he's steering us in the direction of robots, of caves of steel. And what's happening in reality today? Everyone's going to be in these 15-minute cities. LA itself, as we see the horrible, horrible fires, is being transformed into, I don't know what they call it, but there's some project called LA 2028. Well, we continue to jam more and more people into cities and drive more and more people away from the countryside because it's all getting bought up by big corporations. And these mega farms that just extend over square miles, hundreds and hundreds of square miles for various of the farms, these things are completely against our humanity. Because if all we're going to do is get some cyber food from a replicator like on Star Trek, or otherwise delivered by Amazon, our daily food, what where is our humanity? We're just there to consume, and then to do whatever work that they want us to do. Or perhaps they're just going to be mining our energy through some cybernetic connection that whenever we breathe, they get a few joules of energy that they can use. I've heard of schemes like that coming along. But this is one of the things that I love about the LaRouche movement, and I love about the Schiller Institute, is that they are 100% behind the human spark, the difference between humans and the rest of reality, and that divine spark that gives us godlike qualities that, if we are wise and use them correctly, will produce something that is beautiful and good for everyone. But if we allow ourselves to be seduced into these caves of steel, then we're gone. And George Orwell is right. The future of humanity is a boot on the human neck forever. So those are my thoughts. Now we've got a few minutes left, so let me turn over to the chat room and see if anybody else has any thoughts along these lines. Let's go back and see. Hello, Jonathan Edward Gibson, welcome to the channel. All too familiar. I was hip deep in this, from the design and architecture to info and sys and VR gaming to DoD cybersecurity contractor by 9/11. Horrified digging into these forces shaping my life. There. Wow, you said it. Brightmore, hello. Right, recent study proposes that psychopathy stems from humans living in super tribes, large cities for which the human brain is not innately wired. Interesting. Karma Doc, hey Karma. I think today's counterculture is Gen Z exiting the city and taking up homesteading. I hope so. If you can find the land and, let's get back to nature. And the insanity of jamming everybody, millions and millions of people, into a few square miles, and who gets to play with the rest of the world? Well, they do. Brightmore, will LA build back better with 3 6s in the spelling in time for the Olympics? It looks like Governor Newsom has already been talking to the developers, and just kind of has a little, who knows what's going to happen attitude, like as if he doesn't know. That son of a bitch. There's my friend Fred Vinci. Good morning, Fred. Happy New Year to you. And thank you for your very kind comments I've received and love to hear from you. We have already lost humanity. No, we haven't, Fred. I know you are human. I have no doubt about it. And millions and billions of us are still human. The thing is, though, we are at the slippery slope, the precipice. And if we fall over it, then it will be that Orwellian nightmare. And yes, that New York sidewalks effect from the 60s has been programming us to tell us, look, everybody else stands around and doesn't cry bloody murder and charge after the thief, the murderer, or do anything. They just kind of watch these horrible things unfold. And, except for a few people, some of whom I know and love, there's just not much protests going on to genocide in the Middle East right now. And if we're just standing aside and letting it happen, yeah, it's a terrible thing to realize. Going back up to the top just to skip through. There's Karma. Good morning, dear. Happens. How do you do? David's here. Hello and good morning to you, my friend. And of course, McKinley, there's a great old time music song called From Buffalo to Washington. It's about the train ride. McKinley, after being shot, was still alive and was on his way to Washington, where he died. It's a classic old song that I think is worth looking up. You can find it on YouTube, From Buffalo to Washington. And yeah, I'm a big McKinley fan. Okay, and thank you, Nadia. David Underdown. Grok disputes EIR based on font creation date, same legal strategy as Dan Rathergate. Well, that's a little too esoteric for me, David, but yeah, I know you're right. I just don't know the details behind what you're saying. And here is Corky migrating to Rumble. If you guys aren't on Rumble yet, please join our Rumble channel. We really need you. It's McDuff Lives, all one word, on Rumble. And you just push the follow button and you're in. Hello, Big Daddy. And here's a comment about Kay Griggs from Brightmoor. Kay Griggs called the higher-ups in the deep U.S. military, quote, German existentialists, unquote. Not bad. Yeah, lots of game theory. Yeah, this game theory is really deep into this stuff, isn't it? Yeah, Big Blue. And can you make the smartest chess player out of a computer, or will it always be a human? Well, I guess it's just a matter of how complex the chess game really is. And if you can break it, if you can crack it, then yeah, the computer will win. But if it's so complex that you can't crack it, then humans still have, I think, the advantage because of our curiosity. Robert Kovacs is here. Hello, good morning. Game theory and psycho-cybernetics. Yeah. Yes, loving robots. Me too. Yeah, it was all on television, wasn't it? Everything had to do with robots. Robert Duncan. Thank you, Brightmore. The hive mind, yeah. When people talk about the hive mind, I go, no, don't think of the hive mind. Don't do that. I don't want to be part of a hive. Post-Luddite middle path. Yeah, post-Luddite. Yeah, it's interesting. So, no, you can't swing the other way. You just have to have human control at all times. You can't just allow the humans to become part of a digital environment 24/7, which I really think, is what they're going for, like in The Matrix, the movie, where everybody's in a pod or everybody's in a cubicle, and you're just, all you do all day long is you interface with your computer. And you might not even know it. You might think that you're in some exotic location, actually negotiating your life through it, like in that crazy movie with the blue dragons that fly. I can't remember the name of it, but from wasn't it Ridley Scott or somebody like that? Anyway, the idea is you can convince yourself that this cyber reality is real, and then you might like it better than real reality and just stay there. Yeah, because people don't know what real reality is anymore. And as we spend our time in the computer digital land, shooting space crabs, as my old friend used to say, yeah, um, the all the beauty of life just you lose it. You don't know it's there. It's a terrible, terrible future for humanity, and they can do it if we let them. They can do it. Digital biology. Pentacles. Largest Masonic lodges in Detroit. Yeah. And Corky, your mom went to Wayne State. Very cool. Or else it's MOM, but I guess you think your mom. I guess you're capitalizing your mom there, aren't you? Good for you. And the spread of cognitive dissonance. That's right, because if you don't know, but you get two competing ideas that are equally reasonable in your mind, then you're frozen. Then you're stuck like a deer in the headlights. And that's cognitive dissonance is just, they use that against us all the time to deprive us of our ability to reason and our ability to look behind the curtain and, see through their BS. And Polly's saying, hi. Hey, Polly. Christopher Ballin is seminal reading for 9/11. Haven't read it. Cool. How people are controlled by crowd psychology, The Crowd by Gustave Le Bon. I've heard of that. I think that probably is a worthwhile source to look into. Thank you, Imagine. Yeah, Corky's definitely human. There's no other explanation for Corky, but he must be human. Quantum entanglement, says Sybil 7, are what we build with each other. Newsom is bragging about rails finally starting to be laid for California. How long we've been fighting. How long California has been back and forth on the high-speed rails. Yeah. I guess with the Olympics coming, that everything becomes worthwhile. And all the developers are like, yeah, man, I'm going to cash in on this. Jonathan Edward Gibson, yes, I saw the 9/11 lies begin within hours and knew enough structural mechanics to understand WTC 7 didn't commit suicide. Still smoldering, I was told we'd go into Iraq and beyond. I disagreed. Yeah, it's the story of our lives, isn't it, Jonathan? Here's a question for David. I would like to know Dave's take on Heter Iska loans. What's the frequency, Kenneth? Scary like Michael Levine and Anthrobots. Yeah. Philip K. Dick saw this alone. I haven't read Philip K. Dick. A lot of people do swear by him, or so maybe another thing to look into. My goodness, folks, I have so many rabbit holes that I'm in right now. It's both tempting and also foreboding for me to jump in another one. I'm glad there's so many of us, because a lot of people, can specialize in things, and you know what I specialize in, and so it's great to have a community of people, some working on this or that or different aspects of what's going on. And one of the great sources that we have, of course, is Peter Duke, whose house just got completely demolished in the Palisades fire, and we send our thoughts and prayers out to him and his family, and everybody else, of course, in all those horrible, horrible fires. It's just a tragedy for our country that I don't, it's as big as the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, if we could still call it that. Under Obama, and somehow Obama just couldn't get his thumb down there to put it down and hold the oil from destroying the ecosystem of the Gulf of Mexico. And now we have something that's going to be even more expensive in the near term, and probably an indication of real subversion of our country by financial powers that are reaching in to take us over by any means necessary. And Karma again, glad to hear from you, Karma. These phones we have with their black screens are modern day scrying mirrors. Who's giving us the answer? Now, I don't know that word, scrying. That's interesting. Blue Dragons, as in Operation Bluebeam. Maybe, yeah, that's a good way to think of it. You can see all of these crazy things because they've projected them not only onto a screen, but also onto reality. Year of the Snake and Santa Fe Institute, founded by Rutt, is how they game new market schema to harness us. Our choices mined for their market dominations, all below perceptual awareness. Isn't that something? Game B is faint for WEF. Boy, we could do without the WEF, could we not? I mean, that whole scheme of consolidating the entire economy of the world under one rubric, that's the empire. That's totalitarianism, and that is Orwellian dystopia. All right, Raz, good to have you here on Rumble, and everybody else that can join us on Rumble, please do. I hesitate to broadcast so much on YouTube because I just don't like them, but they have probably 100 times the reach of any other platform. So, folks that didn't follow me over to Rumble the first time I asked you to, I'm asking you again, because one day I'd love to just cut the cord from YouTube permanently. Oh my, yeah, Polly. Peter Duke lost all his books. It's unbelievable. And people are going to be psychologically traumatized for weeks, if not their lifetimes, out of this. I think of the children, and it's just so important that they have a good mentors that can help them rationalize and get through this. And boy, it's going to be tough. Right. No offense to robots, says Sybil, but I don't like robots. Collective rabbit holing. Yeah, that's right. Corky's into cold fusion, and we have benefited from his research many times already. Keep going, Corky, and keep your artwork. My God, what a fantastic artist you are. Love Peter Duke. So much of my youth burns in some of that ritual sacrifice, in some ritual sacrifice meant to break us. Wow, that's a powerful thing to read too. You know, my youth burns in ritual sacrifice meant to break us. I don't know where that thought came from, if that's you, Jonathan, or you got it from Peter, but it hits me in the numbers too, man. Scrying and clear depth gazing is a form of crystal ball gazing. Okay. Thanks, Cork. Wow. Clear depth gazing. Ryan Montgomery of Pen Tester for insights. How easy it is for people who own the OM.G devices sold by the NSA. Okay. Nothing is private and everything is manipulated. Well, that's their dream world, isn't it? And I'm going to let that be the last comment. I will see you tomorrow with, guess who? Our good friend Harley Schlanger. And we'll be excited to talk to Harley about what's going on in Europe. Is it possible that popular revolt in the ballot box can actually change the government in Germany and all of these other countries that are hopefully going to finally be free of the NATO chains that bind them when President Trump takes office? We'll talk to Harley Schlanger about that tomorrow right here at 11 a.m. I hope you can be with us. And thank you all for being with me this morning and indulging me in this very, very well-written essay from 2007. Bye now.